You heard it here first. So, kids and keto.
Kids, who'd have them?
Everyone should own a few. Because we get off, the question happens a lot, and we get asked the question a lot, especially, I think, a lot from people who have tried keto and been successful on keto, and they really want the benefits for their kids. But they're kind of a little bit unsure as to whether their kids' bodies or whether kids generally will benefit from keto, or whether they need a more traditional, well, not traditional, but whether they shouldn't transition their kids into keto until a little bit older.
Yeah, and I think it's really an interesting topic, because I think if you look at what's happening now, you look at the generation of kids who are maybe between probably 5 and 15.
Yep.
Their parents are typically what? 30
to 50.
To 50, say?
Yes.
And that 30 to 50 age range is an age range that's grown up, especially in what we'd call Western countries, with that standard American or standard Australian diet, which is filled with carbohydrates, sugars,
yes.
processed food,
yes.
junk food. So if you go back to, the grandparents of those kids, who may be 50, 60, 70,
Yes.
most of them would have had quite a different diet. Their diet would have been filled with fresh foods that came directly from the farm, or the meat and the eggs, or even the grains all came directly from the farms. The milk was delivered directly. That generation would remember the milk being delivered to the doorstep.
Absolutely, yeah.
So a lot of whole food, a lot of fresh food, and I think that those kids aged 5 to 15, their parents weren't brought up in that era, so they don't remember that. They've grown up on the shit food themselves. And so the kids have grown up naturally on that shit food. So,
and if we take a snapshot, if you look at kids these days, and I can do this because I've got 5 kids, so I can play that card, because my kids are from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, anywhere between 6 and 22, I think, at the moment. So the kids, I've got a lot of kids, and so I've invested heavily in kids.
6 and 21.
Get
it right. Get it right.
There's too many of them to remember, little bastards. We love them, of course. Of course, we love our children. But if we took a snapshot of kids generally, there is major problems from a wellness and a health perspective for the population of kids. And there's major problems that we possibly didn't see 40, 50, 60 years ago in young kids.
True.
And if we're looking at kids, and I'm doing some general numbers here, and I'm sure you'll give me some specifics. If you look at kids between the age of 3, 4, 5, when they're past that baby stage and they're starting to eat some more adult type foods, they've gone past the gunky junky stuff, and they're into the little kids meals right through until they're 16, 17, 18 and starting to do their own food. They're fat, they're unhealthy. There is a significant number of kids are predisposed to some significant illnesses. So as a group, there's a lot of those Western kids who are not doing well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, you look at some of the statistics. You're right. So you've got lots of kids that are fat. Let's face it. They're fat and they're obese. We never saw
fat and obese.
Yeah, fat or obese.
Oh, sorry. I think it's
fat or obese. You can't be fat and obese. But you do. You see lots of kids. I remember, if you look back in books, you look at articles, you look at what you remember from your own childhood. You had kids who had puppy fat.
Yes.
But they traditionally lost it probably by the age of maybe 8, 9, 10. But now we see lots of fat kids. And then there was a big issue about, is it because they're all playing computer games?
That's it. And there's a blame on kids aren't active anymore because they're inside. Bullshit.
Yeah, that's
It's not that.
No, I don't think
that
it's
certainly
that.
contributes. I mean, the kids aren't as active, but a kid who eats a good, healthy diet and spends a significant amount of time on a computer game is still not going to have that fat, that excess body fat that the body doesn't require.
Well, take countries where kids can't get outside.
Yes.
Right, so you have a lot of countries where over winter, the temperatures are such that it really isn't possible to go outside and play outside. So they may play inside, but they're not going to be running around and exercising.
No.
So the argument doesn't hold true, because what's the difference just being locked inside?
Yes.
And they always were for generations, compared to sitting playing computer games. Now, I'm not saying I advocate computer games, however, I think there's a whole bunch of mental benefits that kids can get from, and creative benefits. So that's another episode.
It's another episode.
Because I think there's a great balance to be had, because they're amazing for kids' development. But if you look at kids, we've got the overweight issue, and the statistics are quite horrifying.
They are.
We've got the issue around diabetes. What we're seeing now is, type 2 diabetes in kids, and that was more of an adult's disease. We're now seeing it in children at, again, horrifying rates, shocking rates. We're seeing lots of metabolic diseases. We're seeing autoimmune conditions. But we're also seeing things like ADD and ADHD on the rise, so kids are constantly in trouble at school because they can't focus, they don't have the attention. Now, I'm sure we always had that to an extent, and we had we just maybe didn't have the name for it, but the number of kids who are diagnosed with those sort of issues, again, is on the rise.
Yeah.
And again, the other statistic that absolutely horrifies me is that the life expectancy of the youngest generation is actually going down.
Yeah.
So we're talking about longevity, we're talking about biohacking, we're talking about living to 180, and the current generation will be very lucky if they hit 70. So it's the first time, and that is the first time ever in history that life expectancy is going down.
Yeah. Now, this is what gets to me, because I obviously as a parent, I know a lot of parents, and every parent I know would die for their kids. They do anything for their kids, and they spend their entire parenting life providing the best protection for their kids, providing the best education for the kids, making sure their kids have what they need. They're doing everything possible to give the kids the safe and secure upbringing and the best possible support to be, from little kids to grow up to be humans, to be adults. And they focus on that, and one of the biggest things they're missing is they're not role modelling the right eating or the right way to make sure the kids grow up to be well and healthy. So they're spending all this time focusing on 80% of the activities as a parent, but there's this area where what they're doing is role modelling back to their kids. And worse still, they're feeding their kids, it is dietary child abuse, where they're feeding these kids this shit food, and we now know there's alternatives. So my first question, Lynn, and this is the question I get asked all the time, so I'm going to ask you, I don't think keto is safe for kids.
All right.
So is keto safe for kids, or is it an adult eating plan pattern?
Let's go back to babies. Let's go right back to babies. When you were a baby, when you were first born, if you were breastfed,
I was.
Then you were being fed a ketogenic diet.
Why?
Because breast milk is absolutely perfect ketogenic food.
Brilliant.
It has no carbs.
Bring back the boobs.
It's high in fats. There you go.
So we should breastfeed until 16.
That's it.
And then everyone will be healthy.
I'm sure everyone will
Brilliant. We've
love
solved
that.
the problem.
Just keep it going. That's right, adulthood. But so breast milk is a keto food.
Okay.
It's high in fat. It has no carbohydrates, so it's very low in carbohydrates, and there's a bit of protein in there, and it's perfect for a growing baby. So we come out of the womb, and our first experience of life is ketogenic. We then take our babies, we put them on formula, we give them carbohydrates, and we wean them off a ketogenic diet. So the first thing is, it was safe it is safe for our babies. So why isn't it safe for our kids?
Yeah, fair call.
So that's my first point. I guess the second point is look back at the ancestors and what the ancestors had. When kids 10,000 years ago were around, there was absolutely no carbohydrate, there were no grains. Well, there were carbohydrates, there were no grains. So they would get carbohydrate in limited supply when they found some honey perhaps, or a few berries. They'd get a bit of carbohydrate, but they wouldn't typically get grains, or definitely wouldn't get grains. They didn't even exist at that point in time.
Yeah.
So the kids of that era our ancestral kids, way back to when man first came onto the planet, have always had a ketogenic diet and lifestyle.
And they seem to do okay, didn't they?
And they survived.
That's why we're here.
If they hadn't, we'd have died out as a human race.
Absolutely.
So let's face it, it must be safe for kids because evolution tells us it's safe. Because if not, the human race would have died out long ago.
All right.
So babies are born and get fed ketogenic diet. Kids ancestrally had a ketogenic diet. They didn't have any choice. And yes, ketogenic diets are proven to be safe for kids. And I'll give you a more up-to-date fact. Look at about 120 years ago when the ketogenic diet came about. It was developed for epilepsy, for treatment of epilepsy, and it was used for kids.
Okay.
So it was designed specifically for epilepsy in kids. Therefore, yes, it must be safe. So if it's safe for kids with epilepsy, it was safe for our ancestral kids, and it is safe for babies. Yes, it's safe for kids of all ages.
All right, so it's safe. So as a parent, that's my number one concern. Am I going to change my kids' eating into something that's not approved or not safe? Because as a parent, I'm always mindful of doing the right thing so I don't get in trouble. Now, if I decide to make the effort to take my child to transition, as we've spoken about, transition my child from the shit they're currently eating, the fast food, the convenience piece. First of all, why do we think parents are doing the fast food convenience thing now? Why is that the chosen diet of the children?
Well, I think you've got to answer that. You've got the kids. So you tell me, why do your kids want convenience food, junk food, Hungry Jacks, Big Mac, whatever shit they eat?
Well, they may eat shit occasionally. Yes, they do, a lot, and it's a concern, but we're getting there slowly. But I think, stepping back from my kids, but I think it's a good way to view it, is to understand that the reason that a lot of kids survive on high-carb foods and convenience foods is simply because, as adults, those foods are very convenient for us to feed their kids. So as adults, we now live in a society where it's far, far easier to get hold of high carbohydrate foods and convenient foods for ourselves. And all we're simply doing is transferring that down to our children. So we're not doing anything deliberately bad. We're just responding to this craving to have foods at our fingertips, to not want to cook and prepare and use wholesome foods, but just get the food on the table. And then you add the second layer with kids. When you've got screaming kids and they're hungry, you just want to give them food and fill them up. And you want to do that fast, because sometimes preparing food taking time versus getting the kid at the table and putting something in their mouth to shut them up. There's a balance, and a lot of parents, and we empathise, because a lot of parents are under the pressure of being able to feed their kids in a short time frame.
I think it's a vicious circle. So I think that you've got the first thing, which is a lot of that food is addictive. Take wheat. Wheat has now been cultivated in such a way that it's very different to the wheat 60 years ago.
Yes.
It's grown for its properties, it's been genetically modified, and it's highly addictive. What we know is that when anybody eats wheat, and anybody eats wheat, it hits the pleasure centre in the brain, particularly those receptors that are opioid receptors. So what happens when we see it in MRI scans, when we scan the brain, when somebody eats wheat, the brain lights up as though it's had a dose of opium, right? So it's just like taking drugs. So it's highly addictive. So kids are addicted because they're getting addicted from a very young age. So they're being fed wheat, which is from plants that are genetically modified. They're highly addictive, and it lights up the brain like opium.
Is there any wheat in Weet-Bix? Because I have one who's addicted, I think he's clinically addicted, to Weet-Bix. And if there's wheat in Weet-Bix, there could be a reason why.
There you go, it could be. It could be. And look, there's wheat, but there's also sugar.
Absolutely.
So whether it's wheat, whether it's gluten, whether it's sugar in itself is addictive, and it's a poison, because anything in high quantity is poisonous. So you've got kids are addicted to these foods anyway. And we know what happens with kids when they don't get what they want. They'll quite often tantrum, they'll scream and shout. Second thing you've got is these foods are empty calories. And what we mean by that is that they don't fill you up. They fill you up momentarily.
Absolutely.
And then your stomach empties, you've had the sugar high, and you've had the big crash, and you're hungry again.
Absolutely.
And that's what is happening to kids. And kids are growing, and they need lots of food, they need nutritious food, but they're having the empty calories, they're having those carbohydrates, the cardboard, and it's not filling them up, so they're wanting food constantly. So that's also the other thing that's feeding is, if you excuse the pun, is that habit of constantly eating.
Yep.
Because the number of kids that you see with a packet of something in their hand, some kind of candy, lolly, sweets, biscuits, crisps, chips, they've constantly got snacks, and parents go out with snacks. I don't remember having snacks as a kid. I had 3 meals a day, and I didn't get snacks in between. But all kids have snacks constantly, and they're constantly asking because they're constantly hungry and their body's topped up. So you've got that. Then you add on to that the layer of the parents are not educated through no fault of their own. Through a lot of it is because what we've been brainwashed with for many, many years, 60, 70 years now, is that low fat is good, carbohydrates are good. So fat is bad.
Yep.
So because of that, parents believe that they are feeding their kids the right food, the high carbohydrate food and the low fat food. Then you go into a supermarket. So let's just imagine you're a busy parent, you've got 2 young kids under the age of 5, you've got them with you in the shopping trolley, and you've gone into the supermarket. What you encounter in the supermarket is a lot of carbohydrates. The biscuit aisles are full, the sweet aisles are full, the breads, the bakery, and you are absolutely bombarded by all this wonderful bright advertising selling you amazing benefits and beautiful food, whereas the fruit, vegetable, meat aisles are either right down the back. They're only the first couple of aisles when you go into the store, very limited, and quite often seem quite expensive, whereas a lot of the other food, it's cheap and it's easy. So there's this downward spiral of addiction, not knowing, buying shit food, and then it starts again, and it's just continuous.
And if you look at this, just as breakfast cereals as an example, that the whole pitch of breakfast cereals is provide energy for the kids for the day, energy in the form of carbohydrates and sugar. So the whole advertising pitch, which many consumers believe, is you need to feed your kid energy in the morning via carbs or sugar to fuel them during the day. And so you can see why parents then stuff their kids full of bread, toast and cereals first thing in the morning, send them off to school enriched in carbohydrates, and they spike up and down. Right, so we got fat kids.
So, no, don't go off that subject for a second. Hang on a second. The science is not wrong.
No.
The science is not wrong, because if you are fueled by glucose,
Yes.
you absolutely need to be fed carbohydrate on a morning.
Yes.
Because you need to keep your body full of glucose.
Because that's your fuel.
Because it's your fuel.
Yep.
So the science is technically correct. What we're talking about when we talk about the keto lifestyle is removing that dirty fuel that has empty calories, that doesn't last long, that gives you crazy blood sugar spikes, that causes insulin resistance, that causes metabolic disease, that causes diseases like diabetes, cancers, all of those sort of things, overweight in children. We're talking about replacing that with a ketogenic, diet and lifestyle.
Yeah. All right, so we got fat kids, sick kids, kids who, if we looked at as a group, are not really in the best shape they can be, and a lot of that is contributed to their diet. We've got a society that is bent on convenience food, which are often carbohydrate and sugar rich. Yep. We've got parents who want to do everything possible to make sure their little darlings grow up to be healthy and happy. And one of the areas that we believe they probably need to focus on is to look at what the little darlings are eating and some possible alternatives. So then if I make that decision with my 5 children and say, let's go to a keto lifestyle, what are some of the benefits that I will see in my kids, or some of the things that I can expect to see in my kids if they were to transition into more of a ketogenic lifestyle versus what they're currently having?
So I think, there's limited studies on kids at the moment, but we've got a lot from the epileptic kids that have been studied extensively, and those studies where we've got a good sample group have shown that the kids lose weight naturally.
Yes.
They don't need to be put on calorie restricted diets. All of that puppy fat does fall off. We see that the rates of ADD and ADHD drop drastically, so kids are suddenly able to focus. Anecdotal evidence says that they get better grades in school.
Yes.
Anecdotal evidence says that they get a lot more energy,
Yes.
and they're not suffering the fatigue, they're not suffering the brain fog and all those sort of problems. The type 2 diabetes, we know categorically that the ketogenic diet tackles type 2 diabetes, so it will help that. So basically it's the flip of everything we talked about.
Yeah.
All of those issues can resolve, and quickly, especially with kids, because kids are growing, kids are developing, and it really does act super fast with kids.
Yeah.
So the results are dramatic, and they're very, very fast with children.
It's bizarre to think that we could say to a parent, if there was something that could give your kids improved focus, they could lose weight or maintain their body weight accurately, have more energy, they would sleep better,
Do better at school.
They're potentially going to reduce their risk of type 2 diabetes. All those benefits are at your fingertips. Would you be interested? Here's a pill. The parents would pay thousands for that pill because they buy that pill because they love to buy things and get things and do the right thing for the kids. If we say to them, all that involves is a bit of modification to what you're feeding your children, not new foods, not dramatic foods, just going back to some more traditional eating.
That's it.
Increasing your fats, decreasing your carbohydrates, modifying, looking for some wholesome foods. Unfortunately, a lot of parents find that far more difficult than just sticking a pill in their mouth and saying, there you go, that's the elixir that's going to fix you.
Yeah, and
So what do you mean?
we get very good, very nice. You're a comedian, Mike.
That's right.
But we keep saying it, and we get sick of saying it.
We do.
But this is hard. Ketogenic lifestyle is hard initially.
Yes.
Because it's very different to what you're used to.
Yes.
It's easy long term once you've understood it. Once you're into the ketogenic lifestyle, once you're seeing the benefit, it's actually really easy, and you adapt and you feel great. But initially, it is hard because it's just the complete opposite of everything you've been taught, everything you're used to. So it's a mindset shift.
Yes.
And it is an eating pattern shift.
Yeah.
So I think, what you just said there is people want to take a pill, they want a quick fix.
Yep.
This is not about quick fix. It is hard initially, you have to be a bit creative, and it's a long game, it's the long term. We're looking for longevity and a healthy life, not overnight success.
And one of the ways to do it, I mean, if you're a parent out there listening and thinking, okay, is this something I should consider? It's the role modelling piece. Because what I know is, with my little man at 10, he used to watch me make omelettes. He loves omelettes. He used to watch me make keto omelettes all the time, and eventually he tried one, and one of his favourite meals now is omelettes that Dad makes because they're keto and he loves them. And surprisingly, at the end of it, he feels full. If I gave him a bowl of Weet-Bix or a bunch of toast or any other cereals, he would have that and come back to me and say, look, I'm still hungry, can I have some more? All within an hour, he would have spiked and want more. Give him a nice, decent omelette with a bunch of fat in it and a bunch of yummy food and some protein in it, a really good, strong keto meal, or bacon and eggs and avo and things like that, and he loves it.
So tell us about a typical omelette. What would you throw in an omelette for your 10-year-old?
My 10-year-old, well, he loves cheese, which is great. So it's a great source of good, healthy fat. So I'd put there'd be butter in there. There'd be some nice organic butter. There would be some yummy cheese in it or on it or around it. Obviously, there'd be some eggs. And then there'd be any sort of wholesome veggies, so some mushrooms in there, because I can hide a good mushroom in there. I can hide some broccoli in there. I can hide a whole bunch of vegetables in there that he will eat. That normally you wouldn't eat, but then they're in an omelette. He'll quite happily have them. I might even make him a keto tomato sauce on the side, rather than just a sugar tomato sauce that you get in the thing. So a bit of natural tomato paste and some balsamic vinegar and a few other little things to make it tasty. So I can make a little sauce. Takes a bit of effort, but it's really nice to sit there as a parent and watch your son or daughter eat food that you've made that you know is really, really healthy. Rather than opening a box of shit chips and going, here you go, mate, that's your dinner. And you know in your gut you're being a shit parent because you bought convenience foods for your kids, and you're doing it because it's easy for you. You know what they're putting in their body is possibly potato, but unlikely, covered in shit oil that they're sticking in their mouth, but you're expecting them to sleep well, expecting them to be good at school, be good at sport, have energy and be good kids. But what you're putting in their mouth is terrible.
And isn't it great? So if you make let's take an omelette as an example. Maybe you've taken some bacon.
Bacon,
Bacon's great in omelettes. Get some nice, good grass-fed, bacon with no nitrates and any nasties in it. Your eggs, your cheese. Kids actually start to learn about whole food.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah.
You know,
because
so
kids don't know nothing
no.
about food. Tell us your stat. You've got this great stat.
Yeah, kids really don't. So 40% of kids, and actually quite a lot of adults, believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows.
So we found that stat out, and it just knocked us over. And unfortunately, there is a bunch of studies into kids and their understanding of where foods come from, and it's appalling. It's laughable, but it's appalling that a lot of kids have no understanding where the primary ingredients for their food comes from. Number of kids who don't know that chips are potatoes.
That's it.
And they're probably not potatoes at the moment. There's probably another stuff, but essentially a chip is a piece of potato dipped in oil. But there's so many kids. If you say, what are these made of? They have no idea. The chips.
No.
So what are they made from? Chips.
So again, what it's doing is, for our society, it's educating the kids, it's helping them with their future, because at some point they're going to have to look after themselves.
Absolutely.
It's teaching them that food doesn't just come out of a box.
Yep.
Wholesome food comes, from the ground, from the animals, and that sort of thing. You can really get kids involved. I think you have to be a bit creative with kids. So getting them involved in the food, getting them involved in making the food can be great fun. Getting them involved in choosing the food, understanding where it's come from. I think all these things are really, really good activities with kids.
Yeah.
And then, just seeing them enjoy some beautiful home-cooked keto food is an absolute delight.
Yeah. And it all sounds good when we talk about it. And, I'm mindful of being a parent and knowing a lot of parents who struggle with just getting food on the table, struggle with having to possibly work and have their kids and juggling the school and the kids' care as well. So it's easy when we talk about it, but it's not easy when you actually have to put it into action, where you have to change how you're feeding your kids from what you're currently doing to some of the suggestions.
But I do think, Mike, it comes back to the thing that you said right at the start.
Which was very clever.
As a parent, and you're a parent for life.
Yes.
Because they say you never stop being a parent.
You don't.
No matter what age you are, no matter what age your kids are, you're always a parent.
Yes.
So as a parent, why are you not prioritising your kids' health in the same way that you prioritise everything else for your kids? You can take the time to take them to the sports activities, all the extracurricular activities, do their homework, spend time playing with them.
Yep.
You can do all those things,
Yep.
but yet you resort to convenience food. And to be quite honest, I think that's shocking. If I look at it from a perspective of being a parent, you should be putting your kids eating first. And even if it is a bit hard, well, do it because you'd do anything else for your child.
And you often put your kids first and almost everything else. And so many parents put their kids first before their social life, before the assets and stuff they can buy because they give money for the kids. They consciously put their kids ahead of so many things in their life. But the one thing they probably don't do well is put their kids' health and wellness, and especially what goes in their mouth, as a priority.
Exactly. So
challenging one.
Time to change. Time to change our society.
Time to do it now.
And time to really sort this out and help our future generations.
Absolutely.